Xavier Brooks wanted to buy a birthday cake for his daughter when two small boys sprinted across the marble floor of the city's most expensive mall, clutching his legs. Right in front of Pandora Whitfield, the coldest millionaire in town, they screamed, "Dad!" Every phone lifted, every head turned. Pandora went still. Xavier went pale. He had never seen these children before, but when one of the boys tugged his sleeve up and revealed a scar on his wrist, the same scar photographed in the Whitfield family safe, 5 years of buried secrets began to collapse. And if you think that was just a case of mistaken identity, wait until you hear what the DNA results said. The apartment on Meridian Street was small enough that the kitchen table doubled as a homework desk, and the single window looked straight at another building's brick wall. But Xavier Brooks kept the place clean. Mia's drawings lined the hallway at child height, each one taped with the same careful hand. The apartment didn't have much. It had order, and order was the thing Xavier could control when everything else in life refused to cooperate. He was 29 years old, a single father since Mia was 18 months, and he worked as an elevator maintenance technician at the Hargrove Grand, the most prestigious shopping complex in the city. He spent his days inside walls and between floors, invisible to the world of marble lobbies and designer storefronts above him. He showed up on time. He fixed what was broken. He kept his head down. Nobody on the executive floors knew his name, and he preferred it that way. That morning, Mia sat at the kitchen table eating toast with her legs swinging. She was turning 7 in 2 days. Xavier had been quietly doing the math for weeks, moving numbers around in his head, the way a man moves furniture in a small room looking for a combination that works when there isn't quite enough space. He had set aside $40. The bakery near the bus stop sold a plain yellow cake with white frosting for $38. It wasn't much, but it would have candles and her name in frosting, and she would feel like the most important person in the world for exactly one evening. "Dad," Mia said carefully, wearing the expression she used when asking for something she already suspected the answer to. "Do you think we could go to the Hargrove this year? For my birthday? Not to buy anything. Just to look." Xavier set down his coffee. The Hargrove was where he worked. But going there as a customer was different. The stores inside charged $400 for a shirt and staffed their entrances with people whose job was to decide who belonged. He had felt those eyes on him before, walking through to reach the service corridor. Still, he looked at Mia's face, that careful, hopeful expression, and thought about how she had asked for almost nothing all year. "Sure," he said, "we'll go this weekend." She smiled like he had told her they were flying to Paris. That same morning, across the city in a glass tower on Fairmont Avenue, Pandora Whitfield was already 40 minutes into her second meeting of the day. She was 28 years old and had been acting chairman of Whitfield Hotels since her brother Carter died 18 months ago. She had inherited not only a company but a legal obligation, 2 little boys named Liam and Lucas, 5 years old, Carter's sons on paper. She loved them completely. The complicated part was everything else. Carter's official file listed the boy's biological father as an anonymous donor, a designation Pandora had accepted because grieving her brother had taken most of her capacity for investigation. But Liam had started asking about fathers, not angrily, just quietly, the way a child asks about a word he heard and didn't understand. He asked at dinner, at bedtime, in the middle of cartoons. Pandora would say gently that some families were different, and he would nod seriously, as if filing the answer, while already preparing the next question. That Saturday, Pandora was scheduled to appear at the Hargrove Grand for a charity event supporting foster youth programs. She brought Liam and Lucas because leaving them home on a weekend felt wrong. She hired a handler to watch them during the event. She told herself everything was organized. She believed it until she turned around, and they were gone. The Hargrove Grand on a Saturday afternoon was the kind of beautiful that made people feel quietly inadequate. The atrium ceiling was 60 feet of glass and steel. The floor was pale Italian marble. Every store entrance was lit from within like a stage set, and the people moving through it moved with the particular confidence of those who had never once wondered whether they belonged somewhere. Xavier had taken the bus. He wore a clean white button-down shirt, dark slacks, and shoes that had been resoled twice. He looked respectable in the way a man looks when he has worked to look respectable, which is different from the way a man looks when it has never occurred to him that he might need to. Mia walked beside him with her hand tucked inside his, turning her head in every direction at once, taking everything in. A store associate near one entrance glanced at them, and looked away with practiced indifference. Xavier noticed. He always noticed. He let it pass. He had stopped near a bakery kiosk on the main floor to check the prices higher than he'd hoped when he heard small footsteps moving fast across marble. He straightened and turned just as two figures in matching navy sweaters crashed into his legs with enough force to make him stagger back a step. Both of them held on, their arms wrapped around his thighs, and they pressed their faces against him with the absolute certainty of children who have found something they have been looking for. Both boys said it at the same time, not loudly, not as a question. "Dad." The immediate radius around Xavier went quiet. A woman near the kiosk stopped mid-sentence. A security guard near the charity event area turned. 3 people with phones pulled them out without fully understanding why. Mia stared up at the 2 boys clinging to her father with an expression of pure bewilderment. Xavier looked down at them. He had never seen these children before in his life. His hands came up instinctively to hold them steady because they were small and they had run hard, even as his mind searched for an explanation. "Hey," he said carefully, "I think maybe you've got the wrong person. It's okay." The taller one, Liam, tipped his head back and looked at Xavier with dark, serious eyes. "We saw you in Mama's dream book," he said. "She drew your picture." Xavier opened his mouth and said nothing. The smaller one, Lucas, reached up and took Xavier's left hand. With small, deliberate fingers, he pushed the shirt cuff up past the wrist. The scar was there, long and pale, running from just below the wrist toward the inside of the elbow, the kind of scar that comes from surgery or a bad accident or both. Xavier had gotten it 5 years ago during a hospitalization. He remembered imperfectly. In a period he remembered imperfectly because a blow to the head had caused what doctors described as temporary memory disruption. He hadn't thought about that scar in years. It was just part of his arm. 40 feet away, on the elevated platform of the charity event, Pandora Whitfield had just turned from the podium when Madison said her name in a tone that was not an emergency, but was not an emergency. Pandora looked where Madison was pointing. She saw her boys. She saw the stranger. She saw the scar along his wrist, and the blood left her face so completely that Hunter Blake reached out to take her elbow, thinking she was about to fall. Hunter Blake did not wait for an explanation. That was the kind of man. He was the kind who arrives at a conclusion before the evidence does, provided the conclusion serves his interests. He was across the atrium floor in under 30 seconds, one hand raised as if summoning order from a subordinate, his voice already calibrated to carry just far enough to be heard by the people around them. "Security," he said to the nearest guard. "I want this man's name and I want him off the premises." Xavier did not step back. "I haven't done anything. You're in physical contact with 2 children who don't belong to you. That's enough. They ran to me. I haven't moved." Hunter smiled in the way that men smile when they consider the contest already over. He dropped his voice just far enough to be condescending without being quiet. "Whatever you're running here, take it somewhere else." Mia had been watching everything with the still, wide-eyed attention of a child who has learned to read a room. Her face had gone tight. She was not crying yet, but she was close, and Xavier saw it and felt it like a stone dropped into his chest. He crouched down in front of her, right there in the middle of the atrium, with people watching and Hunter still talking somewhere above him, and looked at his daughter. "Hey," he said quietly, "I'm right here. Nothing's happening." Mia blinked. "He called you. It doesn't matter what he called me." Xavier smoothed a hand over her hair. "You want to go get that cake?" Pandora arrived at that moment. She had crossed the atrium at a pace that communicated urgency without permitting a scene, a balance she had been practicing since she was 12. She stopped a few feet away and looked at Xavier, not at Hunter. Not at the security guard, not at her boys, but at this man who had just very quietly refused to be humiliated in front of his child. "Who are you?" she asked. "Xavier Brooks. I work here, elevator maintenance. I've never met your kids before today. I don't know why they came to me. I was going to buy a birthday cake." His voice was flat and honest in the way people are honest when they have nothing to protect. Madison Vale had spent 4 years as Pandora's assistant and had developed a reliable internal sensor for the difference between performed innocence and actual innocence. She watched Xavier's face. She watched Liam and Lucas, who had still not let go of him, pressed against his sides with the compact, immovable certainty of animals finding warmth. Lucas whispered something up toward Xavier's face that sounded like, "You smell like the scarf in Mama's box." Madison leaned toward Pandora and said very quietly, "This isn't a setup." Hunter heard her and turned with an expression of pure annoyance. But Pandora had already made a decision. She looked at the security guard and at Hunter, and at the small, strange tableau in front of her, and said in a tone that left no room for argument, "No one is leaving. I want to speak with him privately. Now." The private suite on the 4th floor of the Hargrove Grand was used by building ownership, which included the Whitfield Family Trust. It had a conference table, a small kitchen, and a view of the atrium below. Pandora stood near the window. Hunter sat in a chair with the posture of a man who considered himself the most important person in any room. Xavier sat across from Pandora with Mia in his lap, and Liam and Lucas settled on either side of him, which was where they had insisted on being, and which nobody felt strongly enough to dispute. Madison set a legal-sized brown envelope on the table. Old, its flap opened once and tucked back rather than resealed. "This was in Carter's private file," Pandora said.